The understanding of being a slave as a free man. This is an evaluation of the narrative 12 Years a Slave. In this presentation, I will be evaluating Solomon Northup's time in captivity and will be explaining three major concepts that are written in this narrative. 12 Years a Slave gives a great amount of detail through the eyes of a black man born into freedom. This narrative also analyzes how Northup was kidnapped into slavery, his masters that he encountered, and his liberation from slavery after 12 years. This narrative, 12 Years a Slave, was written by Solomon Northup himself. This book was published in 1853 in Saratoga, New York. Northup was born into freedom in 1808 and was kidnapped into slavery in Washington City in 1841. It was not until 12 years later, in 1853, when Northup was rescued and liberated from a cotton plantation near the Red River in Louisiana. In 1841, blacks could show on paper that they were free, if so permitted. Northup, a man now free for 30 years, has a wife and children who are free as well. One day, Northup was approached at the park by two men by the names of Merrill Brown and Abram Hamilton. They told him they heard of his talent on the violin and asked if he would come with them to Washington to play in their circus show. They said they would pay him for travel and double the amount for the show. He could not turn down this offer, so he went with. Northup did so well at the show that they took him out to dinner after. He was unaware that during dinner he was being drugged. After Northup passed out, Brown and Hamilton sold him to James Birch, a slave dealer in Washington. The next morning, when Northup woke up, he was in a small, unfamiliar room with his hands and feet chained to the ground. When Birch walked in, Northup tried to explain to him that he was a free man from New York. Birch beat Northup until he was willing to say that he was a runaway slave from Georgia. This goes to show how easy it was to get away with things like this in these times. Since Brown and Hamilton most likely took Northup's paper that declared him free, he could no longer have a chance at defending himself as a free man. Northup would not back down and refrain to say he was a slave even when he was being beaten with a wooden paddle. It was not until the paddle broke and the tethered whip was brought out and Northern could no longer breathe did he agree in vain with Birch that he was a runaway slave. Northup's first master was William Ford. He had bought Northup and Eliza together. When Eliza pleaded that she would not go without her daughter, he tried to buy her too. Mr. Freeman, the slave trader, would not allow this to happen. Ford was a very good man to Northup. He had very little strenuous work and even was given a violin to play. Edwin Epps, on the other hand, was a total opposite. Northup spent 10 years on Epps' plantation. He was by far the worst master that Northup had ever had. He was a very cruel man. He would whip the slaves for no reason, and he would make them dance for his own entertainment. He was also very abusive. He was known to rape one of Northup's fellow slaves and would say some of the most provocative things to Northup. The fact that Northup believed that Ford was a better master than Epps just goes to show the severity of these times. Ford may have treated Northup better physically and mentally, but he was still a slave owner. He still buys slaves and then sells them for a profit. He knows that Northup is overqualified for what he's doing, yet he's doing nothing at all to help him. Epps may be more abusive physically and mentally, but at least he's showing his true colors and not hiding anything like the Bible and treatment to minimize the fact that he owns other human beings. Northup's first attempt to get his liberation failed when he gave Armsby, a white man that worked in the fields, his letter in hopes that he would bring it to the post office. Armsby betrayed him and turned him into Epps. He later found a Canadian carpenter who agreed to deliver his letter. As time kept passing, Northup began to lose all hope that he'd ever be free again. It was then that Henry B. Northup, a fellow of the white family that Northup's father worked for prior to him being a freeman, showed up to rescue him. After 12 years of being put in a lifestyle that he didn't deserve, nor was it legal, Northup finally began to get his liberation. After 12 years of mysteriously going missing, he is finally able to see his wife and children again. After 12 years of strenuous work from sunrise to sunfall, Northup can finally rest. Northup used his wife and children as motivation to survive his situation. After so long, Northup began giving up expecting the position that he was in. It was then that his friend from the north came to rescue him. It was then that Northup could begin to live the life that he had the right to. Overall, this narrative gives many details that support the three concepts being evaluated. It was easy to put free men into slavery because people were willing to buy them and lie about the fact that they were free. Slave masters may be different on the surfaces, but deep down are all the same. They are human beings who own other humans. Lastly, never give up on hope because the answer to all your problems can show up where you are least expecting it. Through evaluating these three concepts, Northup showed that no matter what situation you're in or how you got there, if you just do what you need to do to get through it and not overstep your boundaries, it will be over soon enough.